Everything in your life is a mirror. Your bank account, your relationships, your level of confidence. Nothing is accidental. What you see on the outside is a reflection of what you have accepted on the inside. Most people try to change results without changing the cause. That is why nothing works. In the next moments, you'll discover how to change the inner cause and watch the outer world respond automatically. This is not philosophy. This is practical truth. Section 1. The invisible anchor of habitual thought. If you were to take a careful, objective look at the world around you, you would quickly observe a fascinating and somewhat tragic paradox. The vast majority of men and women harbor a quiet, persistent desire for a different life. They look at their current circumstances, their financial standing, their professional achievements, the quality of their relationships, the very environment in which they spend their days. They wish for more money, more peace, more success, and more freedom. They spend countless hours imagining a future that looks markedly different from their present. Yet, despite this nearly universal yearning for transformation, the undeniable reality is that most people will never change their lives. Year after year, decade after decade, their lives will remain fundamentally, predictably the same. To understand why this happens, we must strip away the comforting illusions we have built around the concept of change. We must look past the superficial excuses of bad luck, unfavorable economic conditions, or a lack of opportunity. The reason you will never change your life as you are currently operating has nothing to do with the outside world. It is entirely a matter of natural law. It is a matter of cause and effect. The greatest mistake the human being makes is the belief that his life is something that happens to him, rather than something that is generated by him. We tend to view our circumstances as the causes of our state of mind. We believe that if our circumstances were to improve, our thoughts and feelings would naturally elevate. This is a fundamental reversal of the truth. It is the equivalent of standing in front of a mirror and trying to forcibly physically mold the reflection to smile, without ever changing the expression on your own face. Your life, in all its physical, material, and social manifestations, is an effect. It is the exact mathematical reflection of a hidden cause. That cause is your habitual way of thinking. You cannot alter the effect while leaving the cause untouched. It is a physical and psychological impossibility. Yet this is precisely what most people attempt to do every single day. They try to change their lives by rearranging the external furniture of their existence. They change jobs hoping a new title or a new office will bring fulfillment. They move to new cities believing that a different geography will somehow produce a different reality. They end relationships and begin new ones, expecting that a new companion will finally provide the harmony they seek. But what inevitably happens? Within a few months or perhaps a year, the initial excitement fades, and they find themselves right back where they started. The new job presents the same frustrations as the old one. The new city feels just as confining as the previous town. The new relationship falls into the exact same destructive patterns as the last. They have changed the scenery, but they have not changed themselves. They have carried the invisible anchor of their habitual thoughts with them across state lines and into new offices, because they brought their old mind into a new environment. Their mind simply went to work recreating the old environment in the new location. The human mind is a mechanism of unparalleled power, but it is also entirely neutral. It operates much like the fertile soil of a farmer's field. The soil does not care what kind of seed you plant. It has no preferences. It will return exactly what you sow. If you plant wheat, it will return wheat. If you plant nightshade, a deadly poison, it will return nightshade with the exact same abundance. The mind operates on this identical principle. It does not judge the quality, the utility, or the morality of your thoughts. It simply takes the thoughts you habitually hold, accepts them as the blueprint for your reality, and begins the tireless work of translating those thoughts into physical equivalents. If you are currently experiencing a life of limitation, stagnation, or frustration, it is because you have been planting seeds of limitation, stagnation, and frustration. You may not have done this intentionally. In fact, it is almost certain that you did not do it intentionally. But ignorance of the law does not exempt you from its consequences. Gravity does not cease to operate simply because a person is unaware of it. The law of cause and effect is just as immutable. The barrier to changing your life lies in the automated nature of human thought. We are, by design, creatures of habit. The brain seeks efficiency. To conserve energy, it takes any repeated action, reaction, or thought pattern and pushes it down into the subconscious mind, turning it into an automatic program. This is highly useful when it comes to tying your shoes, driving a car, or navigating the routine physical demands of your day. But it is disastrous when applied to your intellect and your expectations. Psychological studies suggest that the average person thinks tens of thousands of thoughts every single day. The tragedy is that for the vast majority of people, 99% of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts they thought yesterday, and the day before that, stretching back for years. They wake up and immediately access the same catalog of worries. They anticipate the same problems. They react with the same irritation to the same stimuli. They entertain the same doubts about their own capabilities. When your thoughts are merely a repetition of your past, your future can only be a repetition of your present. You are caught in a closed loop. You are expecting a new harvest while diligently planting the exact same seeds. This is why you will never change your life simply by wishing for it to change. Wishing is a passive, fleeting emotion. It has no roots. It is blown away by the first wind of adversity. True change requires a deliberate, conscious, and often uncomfortable interruption of your habitual thought processes. To change your life, you must first accept absolute, unyielding responsibility for the life you currently have. This is a difficult pill for many to swallow. It is far easier to point the finger of blame at parents, at the economy, at the government, or at the vague concept of bad luck. Blame is a comfortable blanket that protects the ego from the cold reality of personal responsibility. But as long as you assign the cause of your circumstances to anything outside of yourself, you render yourself powerless to change those circumstances. If the cause is out there, then the solution must be out there. And you are reduced to a helpless victim, waiting for the world to take pity on you. The world does not take pity. The world simply reflects. When you accept that your current life is the exact result of your past thoughts, you suddenly acquire the power to dictate your future life by taking control of your present thoughts. You move from the passenger seat to the steering wheel, but recognizing this truth is only the preliminary step. The actual work of changing your life is the work of changing your mind, and this requires a level of discipline and self-awareness that very few people are willing to cultivate. You must begin to observe your own thinking. You must become a watchman at the gate of your own mind. When you encounter a challenge, you must catch yourself before you fall into your habitual reaction of defeat or anxiety. You must recognize that the feeling of being stuck is not a physical reality. It is a mental construct. The walls that confine you are not made of stone and mortar. They are made of limiting beliefs and unchallenged assumptions. We fail to change because we treat our thoughts as if they are true, objective reports of reality, rather than the subjective interpretations they actually are. You look at your bank account, see a low balance, and think, "I am poor." You believe this is a statement of fact, but it is not. The low balance is a temporary fact. I am poor is an identity, a state of mind. By adopting that state of mind, You instruct your subconscious to seek out opportunities to validate that identity. You will unconsciously ignore opportunities for advancement. You will squander resources, and you will maintain the equilibrium of poverty, all to prove your own habitual thought correct. The mind seeks harmony between the internal expectation and the external reality. If your internal expectation is one of failure, struggle, and mediocrity, your mind will subtly and visibly orchestrate your actions to ensure you do not deviate from that familiar baseline. It will supply you with 1,000 rational-sounding excuses not to take a risk. It will amplify your fears. It will convince you that the effort required to change is too great, and the probability of success too small. This is the invisible anchor. This is why you can read a dozen books on success, attend seminars, and set ambitious goals on the 1st of January, only to find yourself right back in the same rut by the middle of February. You attempted to change the superstructure of your life without ever addressing the foundation. You tried to build a mansion on a foundation poured for a shed. Until you understand that your thoughts are the primary cause of your experience, you will continue to wrestle with shadows. You will expend enormous amounts of energy fighting against the circumstances of your life, never realizing that you are fighting against your own reflection. The groundwork of any true, lasting transformation begins with the quiet, solitary realization that the mind is the master weaver. It is weaving the garment of your life right now, thread by thread, thought by thought. If you do not like the garment you are wearing, you must stop blaming the loom, and you must consciously, deliberately change the thread. Section 2. The tyranny of the familiar and the crucible of conscious thought. To consciously and deliberately change the thread on the loom of your mind is the most arduous endeavor you will ever undertake. It is far easier to perform strenuous physical labor than it is to sustain a single, original, constructive thought in the face of contradictory circumstances. This is why so few people ever experience a true transformation of their life. They underestimate the immense gravitational pull of their own past, and they misunderstand the mechanics of how human change actually occurs. You must come to understand that physical action alone will never alter the trajectory of your life if the underlying mental premise remains untouched. We live in a society that reveres perpetual motion. We are taught that if we are dissatisfied, we must simply do more, work longer, and move faster. But action without a change in conscious premise is merely a more exhausting form of standing still. If your internal blueprint is drawn for a life of scarcity and frustration, you can work yourself to the point of collapse, and your mind will simply use your increased labor to build a structure of your own defeat more rapidly. You are applying greater speed to a vehicle that is traveling in the wrong direction. The primary obstacle to changing your life is not a lack of opportunity, nor is it a lack of intelligence. The obstacle is the subconscious mind's absolute, unyielding allegiance to the familiar. Your subconscious does not evaluate your life based on whether you are happy, fulfilled, or prosperous. It evaluates your life based entirely on whether your present reality matches your programmed expectations. It seeks equilibrium. It demands that the outer world perfectly mirror the inner world. When you attempt to change your life, you are introducing a foreign element into this carefully balanced system. You decide perhaps that you will no longer accept financial struggle, or that you will no longer tolerate poor health. You set a new goal. For a few days you are propelled by the sheer force of inspiration, but very quickly you encounter a profound psychological friction. Your subconscious mind recognizes that your new thoughts and your new actions do not align with your old established identity. It interprets this deviation not as an improvement, but as a threat to your internal equilibrium. Because the familiar is known, the mind categorizes it as safe, even if the familiar is entirely miserable. The unfamiliar, on the other hand, is unknown, and therefore categorized as dangerous. When you step out of your habitual patterns of thought, your mind sounds an internal alarm. It begins to generate feelings of anxiety, doubt, and profound discomfort. It will supply you with highly rational, logical-sounding arguments as to why your new endeavor is foolish, why the timing is wrong, or why you lack the necessary resources. Does this not to punish you, but to protect you from the unknown, pulling you back toward the safety of the familiar baseline. Most people misinterpret this internal resistance. When they feel the anxiety and the friction of change, they assume it is a sign that they're on the wrong path. They believe that if a decision were truly right, it would feel easy and natural. This is a fatal misunderstanding of human psychology. The discomfort you feel when attempting to change your life is not a warning sign to turn back. It is the absolute definitive proof that you are finally moving forward. You are experiencing the friction of breaking a deeply ingrained habit. If you do not feel this disorientation, you are not changing. To overcome this resistance, people typically rely on willpower. But willpower is a function of the conscious mind, and it is a finite, easily depleted resource. You cannot use willpower to arm wrestle your subconscious mind into submission. The subconscious never sleeps. It never tires. It operates 24 hours a day. If you rely solely on willpower, it is only a matter of time before you become fatigued, stressed, or distracted. The moment your conscious vigilance drops, the subconscious quietly slips the old familiar programming back into the driver's seat, and you find yourself reverting to the very behaviors you swore to abandon. True mental discipline is not a matter of brute force. It is a matter of relentless, quiet vigilance. It requires you to cultivate a profound separation between your awareness and your thoughts. You must realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. This is the paramount skill of the educated mind. You must stand as a watchman at the gate of your own intellect, carefully inspecting every concept, every assumption, and every emotional reaction before you allow it to enter the sanctuary of your subconscious. This brings us to a critical nuance of mental discipline, the danger of superficial positive thinking. Many attempt to change their lives by plastering cheerful affirmations over deep-seated beliefs of inadequacy. They look in the mirror and declare themselves wealthy, while their core identity screams that they are poor. This is like painting over rust. The exterior may look shiny for a brief moment, but the corrosive reality beneath remains untouched, and it will inevitably bleed through. You cannot simply command yourself to stop thinking a negative thought. The human mind operates on the law of substitution. It abhors a vacuum. If you attempt to empty your mind of a worry, the very effort required to suppress the worry focuses your attention entirely upon it, thereby feeding it the energy it needs to survive. To eliminate a destructive habitual thought, you must deliberately and repeatedly introduce a constructive thought of equal or greater emotional weight. You must replace the thread. When the thought of failure arises, you do not fight it. You simply recognize it, set it aside, and deliberately substitute the image of your inevitable success. This process requires an ironclad resolve because of the time delay inherent in the physical universe. In the realm of thought, cause and effect are instantaneous. But in the physical world, there is a lag between the planting of the seed and the reaping of the harvest. This time delay is the crucible where human destinies are forged or broken. When you change your habitual way of thinking, your external circumstances do not change immediately. You will wake up the next morning and your bank account will still be low. Your environment will still be the same. The people around you will still treat you in the same manner. The external world is a delayed reflection of your past thoughts. It is the harvest of the seeds you planted months or years ago. This is the exact point where the undisciplined mind surrenders. The individual looks at the external reality, sees no immediate evidence of change, and concludes that the law of cause and effect is a myth. They allow the present temporary facts of their existence to dictate their internal state of mind. They look at the empty bank account, feel the familiar pang of poverty, and immediately plant a fresh seed of lack, guaranteeing that the cycle will continue. To change your life, you must develop the extraordinary ability to think independently of your circumstances. You must look directly at the physical evidence of your current limitations and refuse to grant them authority over your mind. You must recognize that your present circumstances are merely the decaying monuments of your past thinking. They have no power over your future, unless you choose to animate them with your attention today. You must hold the image of your desired life in the center of your awareness, with such clarity and such conviction that it becomes more real to you than the environment that currently surrounds you. You must think from the end. You do not hope for success. You mentally inhabit success. You assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. By doing so, you begin to alter the fundamental blueprint held within the subconscious mind. You force the subconscious to accept a new baseline. As you sustain this discipline, the subconscious mind will eventually capitulate. It will accept your new constructive thoughts as the new familiar, and once it does, the very mechanism that previously sabotaged your efforts will suddenly begin to work in your favor. It will seek equilibrium between your new internal expectation of success and your external reality. It will begin to subtly direct your attention toward opportunities you previously ignored. It will supply you with the energy and the insight required to take effective action. The profound friction will vanish, replaced by a quiet, unstoppable momentum. But this momentum can only be earned in the crucible of conscious thought, through the disciplined refusal to let the outer world master the inner one. Section 3. The sovereignty of the directed mind. When this disciplined refusal becomes your permanent state of mind, the transition from struggle to momentum is profound. The subconscious mind, having finally capitulated to your persistent direction, ceases to be your adversary and becomes your most powerful ally. It no longer fights to return you to the old baseline of limitation. Instead, it fights to maintain your newly established baseline of success. It goes to work 24 hours a day, orchestrating your perceptions, your impulses, and your actions to perfectly align with the new reality you have demanded. When this shift occurs, your life will begin to change with a speed and a certainty that will startle you. To the unthinking observer, this sudden alteration in your fortunes will appear as a stroke of luck. They will say you were simply in the right place at the right time. They will attribute your progress to a favorable turn in the economy, to a sudden break, or to the intervention of some benevolent outside force. The undisciplined majority will invent 100 rationalizations to explain your success, because to admit the truth that you changed your life solely by taking dominion over your own mind would require them to face their own heavy burden of personal responsibility. But you will know the truth. You will know that the universe is entirely indifferent to idle wishes, but it is absolutely mathematically responsive to your nature. It does not give you what you vaguely hope for. It gives you exactly what you are. When you successfully alter your internal blueprint, you literally change who you are at the level of cause. The external effects must, by the iron laws of nature, rearrange themselves to match this new cause. This rearrangement is not a miracle. It is not a violation of the natural order. It is the absolute fulfillment of it. Here we encounter a subtle and dangerous trap, one that ensnares many who have just begun to experience the rewards of conscious creation. It is the trap of the plateau. As your external circumstances begin to improve, as the financial pressure eases, as your health stabilizes, as your relationships harmonize, the acute friction that initially drove your mental discipline begins to fade. The immediate pain of your past circumstances is replaced by a comfortable, numbing satisfaction. This is the precise moment when the conscious mind is most tempted to go to sleep. It relaxes its vigilance. It abandons its post at the gate of the intellect. And in the moment you stop actively directing your mind, your subconscious resumes its default, passive operation. It begins once again to indiscriminately absorb the stimuli of your surrounding environment, the opinions of your peers, and the generalized anxieties of society. You must understand that mental discipline is not a temporary prescription to be taken only when you are sick with failure. It is the daily hygiene of the intellect. It is a permanent state of stewardship. The law of cause and effect does not pause simply because you have achieved a measure of comfort. The thoughts you permit yourself to think today are actively constructing your tomorrow, regardless of how pleasant your today happens to be. The human mind is like a plot of fiercely fertile earth. The soil does not care what you plant. It will return poisonous weeds as dutifully and as efficiently as it returns golden wheat. It simply returns what is planted, multiplied. If you allow your mind to drift back into the passive reception of random, undirected thoughts, you will slowly and imperceptibly begin to plant the seeds of your next decline. To step permanently out of the ranks of the frustrated majority, and to guarantee that your life continues on an upward trajectory, you must synthesize and internalize a few uncompromising principles. First, you must accept absolute, unmitigated responsibility for your current station in life. This is often a bitter pill for the human ego to swallow. It is much easier to cast yourself as the victim of unfair circumstances. But so long as you attribute your condition to your upbringing, to the enemy, or to the actions of others, you completely forfeit the power to change your condition. The moment you acknowledge that your present life is the exact, unvarnished reflection of your past thinking, you reclaim the steering wheel of your destiny. Responsibility is not a matter of blame. It is a matter of supreme power. Second, you must permanently reframe your relationship with psychological discomfort. You must recognize that the anxiety and the friction you experience when attempting to establish a higher standard of living is not a signal to retreat. It is the friction of the chisel against the marble. It is the absolute evidence of transformation. You must learn to observe this internal resistance objectively, without participating in it. You must expect the old programming to rebel, and you must meet that rebellion with the calm, immovable persistence of a mind that knows its own authority. Third, you must master the time delay of the physical universe. You must develop the intellectual stamina to hold your vision of the future steady, even when the present facts directly contradict it. The undisciplined individual is constantly asking, "What is happening to me right now?" and allowing the answer to dictate their mood and their expectations. The educated mind asks, "What am I causing to happen tomorrow?" You must withdraw your emotional attention from the decaying monuments of your past mistakes. You must fix your focus entirely upon the architecture of your intended future. Let us return, finally, to the central proposition: why you will never change your life. You will never change your life by moving the furniture of your physical world around. You will never change it by seeking a new job, moving to a new city, or finding a new circle of acquaintances, so long as you take your unexamined, undisciplined mind with you. The geographic cure is a common and tragic illusion. A person travels 1,000 miles to escape their frustrations, only to step off the train and find their identical frustrations waiting for them on the platform. The outer world is merely a shadow cast by the inner world. You cannot alter the shape of a shadow by arguing with the darkness, nor can you alter it by manipulating the surface upon which it falls. You can only alter the shadow by moving the object that casts it. You are the object. Your habitual mode of thought is the light that casts the exact shape of your life upon the screen of reality. The human mind is the most profound and powerful agency in the known universe. It is a mechanism of limitless potential, yet it is entirely devoid of its own direction. It is a faithful, unquestioning servant that will build a magnificent estate or a dismal prison with equal efficiency, depending entirely upon the blueprints you consistently provide. Most people live their entire lives without ever once drafting a blueprint of their own conscious design. They allow society, circumstance, and random chance to draw the plans, and then they spend their days wondering why they feel trapped in a structure they do not recognize and do not enjoy. You no longer have that excuse. You now possess the understanding required to draft your own design. The effort required to maintain this mental sovereignty is immense. The vigilance required is constant, and the responsibility is absolute. There is no one coming to do this work for you, but the reward for this effort is the total, unassailable mastery of your own existence. You will no longer be a leaf blown about by the shifting winds of chance. You will no longer be a victim of circumstance, reacting blindly to whatever the day presents. You will become the conscious, deliberate architect of your own destiny. You will command the causes, and you will reap the effects. The power is in your hands. The mechanism is waiting for your instructions. The choice, as it always has been, remains entirely yours.